ask yourself, activists of the left who dismiss this stuff, what is the cement? And it's the force that dictates through these gophers. And that's the force we need to expose and we need to highlight. I think that's what that's what people like me are trying to do. Well, certainly what I'm trying to do is not tell people what to think, but invite people to see that the world can be explained in very different terms to what they've been told all their lives. And if what you're saying has any validity, then it will touch a nerve somewhere. And it's like, I have this this phrase about the control system: they defend the first domino. Because when they have all these dominoes lined up and they push the first one, it pushes all the others down. So what they do is they defend the first domino. So for instance, they have to suppress and ridicule alternative healing, because if it's shown to work and it's accepted to work, then the next question is, why does it work? And suddenly you've got a whole new explanation for the human body and life, and the whole foundation of pharmaceutical medicine starts to collapse. So they have to defend the first domino. And in so many ways, it's a similar process with this information. Once the first domino falls in people's belief system, then others start to fall in this way. If you can produce information, for instance, that shows people that even one major thing in their life, say 9/11 or climate change that isn't by human cause, is simply not true, and the evidence is convincing enough for them to say, I can see it, it's a lie. That's the first domino gone. Because the next one is, well, what the heck else have I been thinking that isn't true? And so we go. And this is the power of the information in starting that process. Because the last thing I'm trying to do in any area that I'm writing or talking about is to say, that belief system of yours, right, give it me here, okay, we'll put it there, here's another one for you. Yeah. It's not about that, it's about just starting that process of people saying, actually, the world's not like I thought it was. Now, how much unlike I thought it was is it really? And away they go, and people then find their own truth. Because, what is truth? For me, the only certainty is eternity. Everything within that is up for grabs in terms of the way we manifest reality. And so what is truth? It's your truth. It's a truth. The truth, I think, is very simple, that we're all one infinite consciousness, and we're different points of attention within that infinite consciousness. So these people walking past me now have a certain point of attention. I have a certain point of attention. And the way we perceive reality as a result of that point of attention is different. But we're still the same one infinite consciousness, awareness. And for me, what the control system is at its foundation seeking to do, and has done brilliantly, is to focus, limit, and glue in place humanity's point of attention. So we're like that. And this is what the media is doing all the time without knowing it, because their point of attention is being, is your point of attention being glued into place? Yes. Well, you'd make a very good journalist. You'd make a very good banker. You'd make a very good scientist. You make a brilliant politician. And the whole point of what I do is, the reason for it, I guess, is to unglue the point of attention so people can see that there are other alternative ways of viewing themselves and reality. And the control system will not be able to survive if enough people unglue themselves, because the glue is what holds the whole house of cards together, and we're the glue. That's the great news, because we can therefore remove it, and down it comes. But only if we take our awareness back and stop having it externally programmed, so that we see self and the world in the way that suits mass human control.
The idea of the matrix is a real contemporary, very powerful metaphor, right? And I know you've alluded to it many times, but in what way people kind of construct their own matrix, don't they?
We live in a holographic reality, and one of the great characteristics of holograms is that every part of the hologram is a smaller version of the whole. This, for instance, is where alternative healing methods come from and what they're based on. When you see that the body is a hologram, every part of the body must be a smaller version of the whole. Thus, when reflexology and acupuncture says they can find points on the ear or the foot or wherever that correspond to different parts of the body, that sounds crazy to mainstream concrete science, but because they don't understand what the body is. But when you realize it's a hologram, those things must manifest. That must be so. You must find the whole body in different parts of the body. And in the same way, because it's holographic, if we have a matrix, there will be multiple levels of the matrix. As it actually said in the Matrix movie, the Morpheus character, when he said that the matrix was a technologically, in effect, generated dream world. So I think that that is based on fact. But in the same way, people live in their own matrix state, which is connected and driven, I think, by the matrix as a whole. The matrix itself is like an information prison, feeding us a sense of perception that puts us in this tunnel vision of limitation. But in the same way, people live in their own individual prisons, which they create by taking on that belief system of limitation. And it's my view that we live in a infinite reality, which is all possibility. And so when you're in a situation of all possibility, then paradox just has to be set aside, because people talk about something, they talk about something that is the all that is, has been, and ever can be. And when you say that, people say, what do you mean? That nothing can be all that is and ever can be. What it can, all possibility. Because all possibility has to be all that is and ever can be, because it's all possibility. And in the same way, everything and nothing must exist in all possibility. All possibility must be an is and an isn't. It must be an everywhere and a nowhere. And so we're dealing with this core reality that where all possibility exists, and yet we have become so detached from that, I would say, by manipulated, cold, calculated design, that vast numbers of people in this world believe that all they need to know to understand self and infinity is a book between two covers called a Bible or a Quran or a Talmud. You have a science which is based on I can't, you can't, limitation basically. When you look at the limitation in all areas of human life, this sense of I can't, this sense of little me, this sense of it's not possible, given that that's all happening within what I suggest is infinite possibility, then either humanity is completely bloody stupid in perceiving those limitations in the way that they do, or, and this is what I suggest, they are being manipulated to believe in limitation, because limitation of possibility equals limitation of perception of self and the world. And you know, when you want to enslave billions of people, you cannot have them in a consciousness state that is in an expanded perception of possibility and reality. You have to have them there.
Lower their expectations.
Yes, and feed them a belief system, which is what? It's a self-censorship system.
Self-policing.
Yeah, self-policing, self-censorship, self-perpetuating prophecies, and we call these things religion. We call them mainstream science, which is itself a religion. Atheism is a religion. The religions that believe in a God, that's their religion. And then you've got the scientific atheists whose God is there is no God. I mean, it's the same basic blueprint, just with a different name on the door.
The new one's consensus reality. That's the new kind of modern religion.
Consensus reality.
Pop religion, really.
Yeah.
If everyone believes it, and then it must be true, and you must be wrong because no one else says this, or, it's not on the news.
You're right, and you can manipulate that simply by fake opinion polls. You can put out a fake opinion poll that says 80% of people believe this, and a lot of people will believe that because the 80% can't be wrong. And in the end, and this is where I feel the conspiracy research and exposure movement needs to open its mind, is that, we can talk, and we should, about manipulated terrorist events like 9/11 and manipulated wars and manipulated economic crashes, all these things, and we need to know about them. But they are not in and of themselves the origin. They are an expression of the origin of all this. And the origin is the external manipulation of human perception. And you can see it at multiple levels. You can see it in the manipulation of belief in the fact that who we are is our name, our job, our family history, our life story, our income bracket, our color, our religion, and all this stuff, our politics. When we are infinite awareness, having an experience. But then you take it in multiple other areas, like if you can persuade people that 19 hijackers that couldn't fly Cessnas somehow manifested the ability to fly wide-body jets on 9/11, then you can justify invading countries based on a war on terror that actually doesn't exist. So it's a mind game. It's a mind game. Everything is a mind game. We see 9/11 and we see people believing in the official story of 9/11. That's the external expression. But take it back to its core. It is the manipulation of vast numbers of people to believe total crap about 9/11, which as a result gives you the justification of further action which you want, what I call problem, reaction, solution. So what I'm saying, Patrick, is wherever you see the manifestations of this conspiracy in its multiple faceted, interconnected tapestry, when you pull all of them back to their core, they are expressions of manipulation of human perception. It's my view that we have confused what I call body-mind with consciousness, which is simply awareness. It's simply a point of attention.
Opening your eyes rather than closing them.
It's a point of attention. And your point of attention can be so narrow that it basically only it covers the realm of the five senses. In which case, if you're in that state, then because that you've got no other level that you are connected to in terms of hearing it, being influenced by it, of higher levels of awareness that can see a much bigger picture than this can.
You're talking about intuition?
Yeah, intuition.
Things like this?
Yeah, intuition, knowing. All those things are expressions of connection to another level of awareness. All of which can be explained, quote, scientifically. But when you're only basically perceiving everything through the five senses, then you only have the realm of the five senses in terms of information to give you a fix on what's happening in the world, who you are, and all the rest of it. And that five sense information is basically controlled in terms of education, the media, all of it, by these family network controlled corporations that are essentially working to the same agenda of human enslavement. And therefore what's fed to the 5 sense level is information to program your sense of self and the world so that you will perceive, therefore believe, therefore behave in ways that suit the agenda for human control. It's interesting to me, as I've traveled around the world to, so many 50 odd countries, and I see, not least in America and countries like that, this absolute explosion of television channels, right? I mean, you could flick them forever and never come back to the start, it seems, sometimes. And there's a program on this, and there's a channel for this, and there's a fishing channel, and there's a golf channel, how rarely, if ever, do I see a channel or program, even, that is asking the question, what is reality? Where are we? Who are we? Where do we come from? Where do we go? What is this reality?
Why are we here?
Why are we here? Because they are massive first dominoes. Because once you start asking them, big questions get big answers eventually. So the idea is to suppress that. So you've got science, it's all a cosmic accident, and you're just an accident, and that's what you are, and you've come from oblivion and you go into oblivion. And I'm not a religious person, I just dogmatically believe in that. And then you've got the religions. I said before that I feel that there was genetic manipulation that went on at some point with humanity, and what they did is they took one of the vertebrae out of the neck, so humanity's always looking up. Look, heaven's up there, God's up there, I'm down here, I'm just little me, I have no power. So what do you do? You're a Christian. I've got this man in a frock, and he tells me what I have to believe to please God and all that stuff, and I just do that, and I go to church. And then you say to an Islamic guy, so what are you? I'm a Muslim. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, I go to the mosque, and this man in a frock tells me what to think, so I please God, and everything's the afterlife, isn't it? It's like get them sitting on a carousel horse, and get them to believe that somehow they'll be able to catch the one in front, right? It's called hope. Keep them in hope, but hope never becomes manifest. So it projects even beyond this life. You do what you're told in this life, and then you'll have a good afterlife, and all this stuff. It's always tomorrow. Oh yeah, austerity now, and then we'll have economic prosperity tomorrow. It's always tomorrow. And then you say to a Jewish guy, so what does that mean? Well, I go to the synagogue, and this man in the frock tells me what to think to please God, and it seems to me with the Jewish religion that, God wants you to do something in fine detail about every flipping 5.5 minutes. And the extreme of it's unbelievable. And what's the time? What does God want me to do at this time now? And what you're looking at is the same blueprint called different names. And it's to hold people in a sense of limitation, I can't, little me, so it will give our power away to that which we think knows more than we do. I mean, on one level it's God, but on another level it's the bloody president, the prime minister, or or whatever. And so that's what happens when you get caught only in the 5 senses, and your point of observation is basically the size of a pea. But and of course all the pressure is to stay there, because if you start to say things that say you're in a Christian situation, or it could be any of them, and then you start to say, well, I'm having these thoughts, I think there might be more to know. I think that so and so. You can't say that. You can't say you're a Christian, and you can't say you're a Muslim. You can't say you're a Jew and believe that, or this is all that stuff. And it's interesting that people describe humanity as sheep, but actually we've out-sheep the sheep, because at least sheep need a sheepdog to keep them in line. We don't. We keep ourselves in line by dictating what are the limits of human perception.
This reminds me of the lion. You have the image of the lion on your book.
Right.
It reminds me of a story. There was a lion who was raised by sheep, and he thought he was a sheep his whole life, until he saw his reflection in the pool and realized at that point he wasn't a sheep, he was a lion. And society really wants to create sheep, in a way, doesn't it? When in fact the lion inside of everybody is there latent.
You're absolutely right. And why do they want sheep? Because sheep follow the one in front. I've watched it. You can have one shepherd and a sheepdog controlling vast numbers of sheep, because they just follow the one in front, and if they don't, then they succumb to the fear of the sheepdog. But the sheepdog has become a sheep-sheepdog hybrid, which we call humans, because although people are sheep and follow the one in front, I mean, it is changing. More and more people are awakening to a much greater sense of self. Hallelujah, brother and sister. But what tends to happen in vast numbers is the sheep are following the one in front, following the shepherd. Well, the Prime Minister said, and the bank said, and all that stuff. And then a sheep in the herd wants to break out. Now the sheep become freaking sheepdogs. You can't do that, you're mad, condemn him, and all this crap. And thus, when there is compared with the global population of 7 billion, when there is a absolute literal, compared with that, handful at the core who are orchestrating this global control system, then you cannot control a population of that size physically. You can do it in small areas with these people in uniform that come from where? Recruited from the target population, police and military, and serving their own slave owners, thinking they're free, or thinking they're fighting for freedom. That's even more kind of hilarious. But you can do it in a small area, but you can't control 7 billion people with tanks in the streets and soldiers at the door. You have to do it two ways. Well, it's a kind of basically two expressions of the same way. You have to so program the population that they keep each other in line. And so what you do is you create a religion. That you watch the blueprint here. You create a religion, and then you break the religion up. First of all, you play the religion off against other religions, but then what you do is you break the original religion up into warring factions. So the religion is now warring with itself and with other religions, which you have with the Shiites and the Sunni and with the Catholics and the Protestants and all the different subdivisions of that. Quite right. And then you create political parties and you play them off against each other. So, you've got groups of people fighting over which mask on the same face should have power this time, and it's all ludicrous. But and then you have racial conflict and these fault lines of various and many kinds, income bracket conflict, the class struggle, which is just another way of saying divide and rule. All these things are done to have the target population at war with itself, policing itself, and people not looking up and realizing that the strings attached to me are the strings attached to the guy I'm fighting, right? And that's what happens. This is why it's so important. When you open your mind and expand your point of attention, so it's not only in the five senses, then these things become blatantly obvious to you. You can see the connecting dots. You can see how that connects to that, to that collective end. It's so blatant. I mean, you'll know this too. And yet people like that go, it's like my mother used to say. She had this phrase, she looked at me, gone out, which is a great phrase. She looked at me, gone out. It's like, what are you talking about? Conspiracy? There's no conspiracy. No, they wouldn't do that. No, you wouldn't do that. They are doing it all the time. And what I was saying earlier, I'll put this in some kind of context. We have been manipulated to believe, if you like, that we are our spacesuit. We are awareness, infinite awareness, points of attention within infinite awareness. And that is operating in a different frequency band to this world that we think we're living in, but actually aren't. You ask anyone walking down this path now, almost anyone, and say, can you see everything there is to see? And they'll go, in this space. Yeah, I think so, yeah. They can't. You can see a tiny, tiny frequency range called visible light, which is so tiny, humans are almost blind compared with what there is to see. According to mainstream science, and they're understating the case, I would suggest, of all the mass matter that exists in this universe, most of which cannot be seen by human sight, or even technology. If you take all the mass matter in this universe, the electromagnetic spectrum is 0.005% of what exists, they say. Some people say, some scientists say it's a bit more, but not much. Visible light, which is the only frequency range that we can turn into a conscious visual reality, is a fraction of the 0.005%. And so all we're seeing is frequency range. And for our point of attention, which is not in this frequency range, it's like having two radio stations. You know, radio 1 and 2 will never meet because they're on different frequencies. But what do you do to get one of the other? You get a radio and you tune it to this frequency. Now you're getting this frequency, radio 1, you're not getting radio 2. You move the frequency dial to radio 2, now you're getting radio 2, not radio 1. But radio 1 hasn't stopped broadcasting just because you've moved your dial off it. Still exists, just that you're not aware of it because you're now on a different frequency. So the human body, what I call the human body-mind computer, biological computer, is the vehicle which our point of attention employs to interact with this frequency range we call visible light. If I've got something in my pocket here, I don't know. Yeah, I've got my keys. My point of awareness, my point of attention, my infinite self could not hold those keys because it's so different in frequency terms to those keys that they just go like that. In fact, they wouldn't even pick them up. So we take on this outer shell we call a body. I say body, mind, biological computer, so, which is resonating within the frequency range we want to interact with. Therefore, I can hold the keys. What the control system's done, which understands this, is got us to self-identify with the vehicle. So one of the chapters in one of my books is headed, I'm not David Icke. I'm not. That's the name for my experience. I am infinite awareness, having that experience. And once you pull people into self-identity with the body, as who they are, not as an expression of your experience, but who you are, then you're immediately into limitation. I can't, and little me. What power do I have? What can I do? And all this stuff. And that's the idea. And so we have this, what I call body-mind, which is the human body, which is actually a holographic. The whole thing's holographic. So many scientists are now beginning to see the bloody obvious that this is not solid. It's holographic. It's all an illusion. And you have the mind, which is basically what people call the auric field, the electromagnetic field. Now that is the vehicle for our infinite awareness to experience this reality. And if you are aware of your true self while having this experience, you're in this world physically, illusory physically, through the vehicle, and you're interacting with it. But you've also got this intuitive insight, knowing, all the things that you mentioned earlier, which is feeding you a bigger picture. So you're in the world, but you're not of it in terms of your point of ultimate observation. What the whole control system is designed to do is to pull our point of attention into the vehicle to such focus that this reality is all we can perceive. And when we do that, it's like this, I would suggest. If you, and I think in theme accurately, symbolize the body-mind, as I'm talking about, with the desktop computer, and consciousness with the guy at the keyboard and the mouse. That's the kind of dynamic I'm talking about. Now, people say, I'm going on the internet. Well, we don't go on the internet, the computer does. We interact with the internet through the computer. This is what this is. Now, imagine you're in a situation, you're at the keyboard and the mouse, and you're telling the computer where you want to go, and you, consciousness, are making a decision on what you make of where you go with the computer. Then suddenly, Houston, we have a problem. You bang in the keyboard, computer's not reacting. You bang in the mouse, computer's not reacting. Now you're standing there, or sitting there, and the computer's now going on the internet, and at the level of the computer mind, it is deciding what it makes of it, and where it's going to go, and how it perceives reality on the internet. And what has it got only to give it a fix on what it's experiencing and what it's making of it? The bloody internet. So the internet, reality, is telling it what the internet is and what to make of it. And in the same way, we live in this control matrix, which pulls the point of attention, if we submit to it, most people do, though it's changing, into the five senses, into the biological computer, basically only. And the control system, what I call this matrix internet, is telling you what to make of it, because that's the only source of information you've got, because you've switched off from that. And this is what's happening. This is why, I mean, what is one thing you find with a computer? It's very predictable. If you put data input in a certain way, in line with the way the computer's programmed, before you press enter, unless the computer's not working, you're going to know what that computer's going to do when you press enter. Now, when you travel around the world, in different cultures and different colors, different races, different belief systems, different religions, and yet, I mean, Patrick, 7 billion people should be giving us, within all possibility, 7 billion points of unique possibility. Look at it. You go to all these apparently different places, you see data input, i.e. a situation arises, whatever it may be, and you're standing there and you're waiting for enter to be pressed because you know how they're going to react to that situation. It doesn't matter almost what their background is, what their religion is and all that stuff. You pretty much know how they're going to react. How can that be? When you've got people like Carl Jung, the psychiatrist, and other psychologists and stuff, saying that they can break down the human personality into 12 major archetypes and combinations of them and stuff. How can you do that with all possibility? You can't. But what can you do it with? Computer programs. Because so much of what we call human personality is actually playing through the biological computer system.
This has creeped in, what you're talking about, an exact replica of this has creeped into politics and into
Exactly.
in their last few decades, and it's what is called as the Tina principle. There is no alternative. We must have austerity. There is no alternative. We must have nuclear power. There is no alternative. This is the only way to do it. There's no other way to do it, so we have to do it this way. This has become an overriding trend, and people have taken this on board.
Yes, they have.
I think.
Manipulation of consensus, as they once called it.
It's a dangerous thing to take on board
It's a
because
program.
it blocks off
Yes.
all possibility.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And the reason we're now seeing it so blatantly is that this has been going on for so long that the programming has got more and more limited. I mean, you know, the program was once wider, and they've picked off and picked it off and picked it off, and now they're pulling. Politics. The American Democrats and Republicans are standing on the same postage stamp. The only difference is rhetoric, and that's even becoming less.
I call it Chelsea and Man United.
Yeah, and look in this country, Patrick, in Britain, we've got David Cameron, the Prime Minister, Conservative, he's from the right, and all he is a face transplant of Tony Blair, who represented the Labour Party that was supposed to be on the left. Once again, they're on the same bloody postage stamp. But you see, people are starting to see this. This is why the numbers of people in elections around the world, voting in elections, are falling. It's because they're starting to realise, as someone brilliantly said in America years ago, it doesn't matter who you vote for, the government still gets in. And it's this secret government that actually controls both sides in elections. So whoever's in, they are in, and their agenda continues. And we've had this wonderful, well, not wonderful, but from an example point of view, because it's so in your face, this wonderful example of Barack Obama. How many people in political history could have claimed during an election campaign, or two of them, with McCain and Clinton, to have been so different to what he was wanting to follow and replace? Change. Never actually said what that change was, of course, because once you get into detail, then you're in trouble. So keep it on the level of change, and then people will project on you their version of what they think you mean. Good for votes. And yet he's gone in and been Bush on steroids, going in the same direction. And it's been good in a way, in a perverse kind of way, that it's actually so blatant that people have seen it doesn't matter who you vote for. Now that's a domino gone.
Yeah.
Once you think, well, it doesn't matter who you vote for because they're all why are they all the same? That's the next domino, and then off we go. They're all the same because they're just pawns of the same
in another
network.
Perverse way, it's forced the so-called neoconservative media to actually do journalism for now, because of Obama's in power.
Yeah.
But that's, again, a kind of a perversion of a benefit.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had a few of them, because it's now becoming so blatant that even some journalists are having to reevaluate their worldview. I found it interesting to see an article recently where quite a well-known anti-war activist was asking in an article the question, why does the left in politics, or the left in activism, why does it produce thousands of people at NATO and G8 summits, but hardly any at Bilderberg meetings? Now this was an important moment in many ways, because it was an example again in the area of the left that perception is beginning to move, and it's very difficult for the left, because to encompass the fact that there is a force that is controlling through left, right and centre, and manipulating through left, right and centre to a specific goal, is to have to accept that probably your pretty much lifelong worldview of us and them and the class struggle has been a nonsense, and that actually this force works through us and them. And how about this? How about this for an idea? That the us and them come together in mutual understanding that they're both pawns in the same game, and then we might be able to do something about this. Because, like I think I said earlier, the class struggle, left and right, is just another version of divide and rule. And the left has vigorously refused and often ridiculed this whole area of conspiracy, because its worldview would fall. And so, I mean, we saw during the Bush era, the boy Bush era, the expansion of the so-called anti-war movement in America, and they were very, you know, getting louder and more vigorous in their opposition. But they had their testicles removed the moment President Obama became president. And yet he's Bush on steroids, and where's the anti-war movement?
And they had their brain removed at 9/11 because they still believed the official explanation of 9/11, so therefore they support the invasion of Afghanistan, and there's the dominoes.
When you do any level of research, ridiculous worldview of the left is different to the right. Not when you get to the point of control, it isn't. And so, you know, so I was in New York late in 2011 speaking, and I spent 3 days at the Occupy protest, Wall Street Occupy protest in the park. I got there the day that they'd thrown them out, and then they were letting them in the next day on different terms. And there were some people there that did realize that there is a global conspiracy and it works through left as much as right. But the vast majority that I talked to were still fighting the left-right, us and them illusion. And if that goes on, then the Occupy protests will, go nowhere. For a simple reason, Patrick. If you do not know the rules of the game you're playing, the game will play you. And this is why it is so important to realize where the controlling point of control really is. Now, people who go to NATO summits to protest and people that go to G8 summits to protest, they've gone a little bit further. They are realizing there is some kind of coordination. But and even if you go to the Bilderberg meetings to protest, which is another big step forward in your seeing that there is global coordination of in a very, very detailed way. But even at Bilderberg meetings, you're still challenging the oil rags, not the engineers, to a large extent. The politicians turn up, the prime minister, the ministers turn up, the head of NATO turns up, and the bankers turn up, and all the rest of it. But they're still, although it's much further forward and needs exposing, good luck to everyone who goes and does that. Congratulations, thanks very much, great job. What I think we when we get really streetwise to what's going on, what we need to do in terms of protests, we need to start focusing on the architects. See, if the left knew where the real power center is and the architects around it, then they would be protesting in vast numbers wherever the Queen goes and wherever the royal family goes, because they're much more than this, but even at this level they are massive symbols of the global control system and the families behind it. So that's where they would be. They wouldn't be protesting at Parliament against the bloody oil rags for whom the families, they're just vehicles for the families to get what they want through into legislation and change in society. They're just the middlemen and women, just the gophers.
Management class.
Yeah, and we really should be focusing on the architects' families that orchestrate through these gophers. Here today, gone tomorrow gophers, I mean, we had a Home Secretary here called Jackie Smith. She was in the Labour Party. And she was a minister, Home Office, Home Secretary, and she brought in these changes, which were very much part of the agenda. Then she disappeared. And now we have this other woman in as Home Secretary from the Conservative Party, and she's taken it on. And then she'll go, and someone else will come in. Now, can we have a look at this? Luke Rudkowski in New York, who I like very much what he does in doorstepping, not just the politicians, but doorstepping people like Jacob Rothschild and Henry Kissinger and people like that, and with a camera and putting questions to them that the mainstream media wouldn't think of asking, never mind ask, and therefore starting to focus on the architects rather than the oil rags. And that is what we need to do more of. We need to hassle these people, because they're cowards. They're bloody cowards. That's why they get everyone else to do their dirty work for them. This is where we need to go, I would suggest, because not only does it directly challenge them and hassle them, because they need to be hassled. They're trying to bloody enslave the world, our grandchildren, our children, all of it. I think they need some hassle. But at the same time, every time it's done, it exposes them and their part in it. And it's the shadow people we have to put the spotlight on.
Shadow government, as it's called by some people.
Yes, and that doesn't mean we don't challenge the politicians as well, but it's the families, the bloodline families behind it that we need to hassle. See, you've got now in Israel, and it's such a relief. I think around the fall, autumn of 2011, about 400,000 Israelis were on the streets of Israeli cities, campaigning against their economic plight brought in by the Netanyahu government, and you see these extraordinary amounts of money increasing all the time, both officially and under the table, that is transferred from the taxpayers of America via the government to Israel. Unbelievable amounts of money, which is why they've got one of the best militaries in the world, and there are less than 8 million people in this sliver of land that you could basically drive around for in much more than a day. But clearly that money's not going to the people of Israel, because they're on the streets saying, are we working harder and getting less? And what they need to focus on, again using the same points that we're talking about. Yes, Netanyahu needs focusing on to an extent. But he's just the David Cameron, Barack Obama, George Bush of Israel, who is dictated through, in his case, because I think he's a contemptible man, very willingly, he is worked through by the same network that's working through Obama and Bush before him and Cameron and Blair before him. And what we need to do as a human race is heal by awareness of the situation. These fault lines of division and divide and rule by the Israeli population outside of the conspiracy, victims of the conspiracy, having common cause with the Palestinians who are victims of the conspiracy, and Americans and Canadians and British having common cause with the Palestinians and the Israelis and what have you, in the realization that we are all, no matter what the little area we live in is called, Israel, United States, whatever, that we're all being herded into Hunger Games-like servitude by the same force. In Israel it's called Netanyahu. America currently it's called Obama. In Britain currently it's called Cameron. But a few years it will be called something else. A few years ago it was called something else. The common factor is the network, the families. And if you're going to bring something down, then you must bring down the common factor that holds it together. On one level, it's the families. On another level, it's people from the target population donning police and military uniforms. Actually, there's not much difference between them now. To impose the will of the control system upon the target population, of which they are examples and members, and they have children and grandchildren that are going to have to live in this world that they are helping to impose. But the greatest thing of all, coming back, Patrick, to what we were talking about a little while ago, is the greatest way that we are enslaved is by giving our power and our sense of perception of self and the world away to these families, who impose it upon us by controlling, indeed from the start creating, the concept of education as we know it, of politics as we know it, of media as we know it, and religion as we know it, as science as we know it. All these roads eventually lead to these families, and the common theme of all of them is keep people in ignorance of who they are, the nature of reality, and once you've disconnected them from their true self, then program that fragment of self with the sense of self and the world that will suit your control system. So the power's with us. We are holding the house of cards together, and we're doing it with our minds, with our perception of self and the world. And if we change that, the house of cards must come down.
Yeah, it's like, when people ask me, what do you do? And I say, I'm a writer. And they say, well, what do you write? And I start naming off, the sort of subject matters I cover. And they say, wow, that's so depressing. How can you do that? How can you look at a global conspiracy and still wake up in the morning with a smile on your face and be a happy person? And I don't know how to explain it to them. So I'd rather be doing nothing else, to be quite frank. You must get that point of view a lot, especially with the material that you're handling and dealing with.
I used to, but if people come to one of my events or read one of my books, it always ends on a very positive thing. Because, I guess if you get to the real bottom line of it all, we are infinite awareness, and we are a point of attention with infinite awareness, which we have control over that point of attention. Now that is as bad as it gets.
Yeah.
And we have this awareness for eternity, because eternity is all that exists. And
but it's a stumbling block for a lot of people. It's a hurdle.
It is. But
it's
I mean, when you get it down to that point, I mean, whatever's happening is something else is going to happen eventually. I mean, we're just dealing with something that we're experiencing now. But the bottom line is, we are eternal consciousness. I mean, that's not bad, is it? I'll settle for that. But you're right, in the sense, and you see it across the spectrum. You see it in people who have religious views and non-religious views and all the rest of it, different political views, and they say, oh, it's all negative. And then you go into the New Age arena, where people are, saying, oh, you must let go of fear, and it's fear, that's the problem. And then because over the years, it's kind of starting to change now, but over the years, one of the greatest resistors of this information has been what people call the New Age movement. Because, oh no, it's negative, we must be positive, and all the rest of it. Now, first of all, I thought you'd let go of fear, so I don't see what the problem is. But can someone explain to me how knowledge can ever be negative? Because what is knowledge? It is an expanded awareness of what is and what's happening. How can that ever be negative? We might not like the fact that this information is as it is, but at least now we bloody know, and now we can do something about it if we choose to. We can't do anything about something we're ignorant of. So where's the negative? The greatest negative is not knowledge in whatever form that information takes. It is ignorance. It is ignorance of knowledge, lack of awareness of the situation we find ourselves in, that has got us in deeper and deeper into this situation. And, in so many ways, there are many elements of humanity that simply need to bloody grow up and stop being children in adult bodies, thinking they're mature. Because, what? It's negative. Oh no. What? The exposure of what's going to happen to your children and grandchildren, and you, in the timescale we're dealing with, is negative. What are you talking about? Grow up, face it, do it. The biggest thing, one of the biggest things that holds people in servitude, collectively and individually, bloody denial. Because denial is simply not wanting to face reality.
Cognitive dissonance,
yes,
whatever.
Exactly. And what is denial? It says, I don't like what the situation is, so I'm going to deny that it is like that and crack on it isn't. And I've used this analogy before, And
meanwhile, you're over here looking at this, and it's going to happen.
I know. It's like,
you can see it playing out.
Sometimes, Patrick, I feel like it's getting easier because people are waking up in greater numbers. It's brilliant, fantastic. But, I feel sometimes like I'm standing on the other side of the road, and there's a guy about to step out in front of a truck, and I'm screaming, "Stop, there's a truck!" And he's going, "You're bloody mad, there's no truck." And then there's this loud bang. And there's a tornado coming, and you don't want to face it's coming, so you put your head in the sand. Oh, there you go. There you go. Oh, God, that feels better. What's on the telly? But the tornado's still coming, and your bum is still in the air. And if you would just go, "It's coming," you can face it and take avoiding action. If you put your head in the sand, in denial, then at some point, out of nowhere, you're going to be spinning 50 foot in the air.
What do you think causes this denial? Do you think it's the fear of being outcast?
I think the biggest thing, Patrick, is people don't want to face what's happening. It's too much for them.
Armed with the knowledge you know something is happening, then you're forced to make a moral choice there. Do you step out and take action, or do you just kind of retreat into your shell? And a lot of people, I think that's the choice maybe they're looking at.
Well, what happens when you start to know and you accept what the situation is? Then suddenly there is a big responsibility.
Yeah.
Because with knowledge comes responsibility. What are you going to do about it? And people would rather ignore or deny to themselves that it's happening than actually face it and take that responsibility and face actually what we're in. And it's interesting how people often thrash out in a really over-the-top manner against people exposing it. Because what they're actually doing, that over-the-top attack, is an expression of their own fear that it's true. And basically when they attack you like that, what they're doing is, shut up, don't, stop it, don't want to hear it, no. That's what they're doing by putting this information out, is you're kind of poking them in the chest in a funny sort of way and saying, look at it, I don't want to look at it, shut up. And their way of expressing that is in attacks and dismissal and ridicule of people that are putting the information out. And that goes with the territory.
From your personal experience, this how do you view the whole thing of public ridicule? Because that's the experience you've gone through and come out the other end, like the tortoise and the hare. You're the tortoise who's gotten massive strides and filling up Wembley Arena. You're selling out tours all over the world. People want to hear what you have to say. Where at the beginning, anyone watching this could put themselves in your shoes 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, 22 years ago I started.
And how did you it made you kind of what you are today?
Yeah, well, first of all, life can seem like a series of random events, but if you look at it, especially those that go with their intuition, because when you go with your intuition, you are connecting into an energetic flow, an information flow, which is taking you in the directions you need to go. This gets in the way because when
mind,
when which is not only in the brain, is multiple
the
levels
mind
of
body you said before.
But so this is coming from, and when I say this, I mean the heart vortex that they call in the East chakras, wheels of light. They connect us out into, or have the potential to connect us out into a much greater point of awareness. And this speaks to us in intuition, in knowing. I just know. What do we do when we say, we don't go, I'm thinking about it, I'm trying to work it out. No, we go, I know. And when you follow that, because it's all I've done in the last 22 years. That's all I've done in 22 years.
Just follow your intuition, your feeling from.
And whenever this got in the way, sorry, step aside, I'm going with this. And it's worked out magnificently. And in the end, this sees that and comes into connection and harmony with the intuition, with the heart, if you like. And what you think and what you intuitively know become the same thing. And the war stops. There's a war going on in most people.
Yeah, this is the conflict.
Yeah.
That's constantly going on in between the mind and what you feel.
What are we talking about, Patrick? The conflict between consciousness and the body-mind. And this is what's going on. And what the control system wants to do is to so program the perception of body-mind that it suppresses this, and it does in most people. But by when you go with your intuition, your life suddenly becomes this synchronistic bloody flow of coincidences, which everything dovetails. It's wonderful. It's an adventure. Not an ordeal, an adventure. But because this is coming from a completely different point of observation of this reality and perception of this reality, this is going to lead you to do things and say things that people in this mode are going to go, hey, he's potty, he's mad, because they can't see. It's like, I think the writer John Milton said this, words to the effect of you can't understand the dancer if you can't hear the music. And here's the music, and if you can't hear the music, then that which is dancing to the music by following intuition is perceived as crazy, because why are you dancing? There's no music. Anyway, especially when you follow your intuition, when you look back on your life, you see that there are no random events, only different steps in the same journey. And when I went on the Wogan show in 1991, and in a state where I didn't know what my bloody name was, my mind had just exploded open. I didn't know where I was. It took about 3 months for everything to morph back, and suddenly I saw the world differently, but I was me again. And that ridicule, that mass ridicule, where I couldn't walk down any street in Britain without being laughed at, and I couldn't going into a pub for years, waste of time, it was uproar. A comedian only say my name, and there was a laugh. What that did was clean me out of one of the greatest of all human prisons, the fear of what other people think. And you see, if you're the control system and you set the norms in society, nonsense as they are, norms, brackets, programs, then the population will police the norms, and anyone who steps out of the norms gets jumped on, as I did. But it cleaned me out of the fear of or concern with what other people think of me. Because frankly, they've got a right to think what they like. It's called freedom. I've got a right to think what I like, funnily enough. That's the bit that they seem to not understand, or used to. Anyway, but I didn't know when that was happening, and it was a nightmare and all the rest of it, that further down my life river, around the corner, which I couldn't see, I was going to be dealing and communicating information about shape-shifting people and reptilian entities and moons that are constructs. If that freaking fear or concern with what people think of me and what I say had not been cleared out at that point in the journey, shape-shifting people, you're freaking joking. I ain't talking about that, right? But
and 100 other things.
But I have no problem with it, because I have this simple philosophy, here's some information, make of it what you will, see ya. I'm not trying to persuade anybody. I just believe in it's a simple thing that
I think more than anything, it's persuading people, instead of looking through the pinhole,
yes,
to open the door and see what's going on in the room.
All I'm saying to people is, hey, if you dismiss something, this is what happens all the time, you will well know from your work. If people, I say this to anyone, if you are dismissing the possibility of something by reflex action, when you have not done 30 seconds of research into the subject, that is not saying something about me. It is a confirmation of the scale of your program perception, of the P-like reality that you live in. It's saying something about you. This is another thing I think people need to, all of us, when I say people, need to understand. When we open our mouth and say something about someone or whatever, we think we're making a statement about them, but every time we open our mouth or write something, we are making a statement about us. And I remember once, it was really at the height of it, and I was at this university, one of the universities, I think it's two, in Nottingham. And I was in the Students' Union. It was a Friday night, I think. And they had me as the turn, because they knew they were going to sell a lot of tickets. Not that I got any money from it, but they were going to sell a lot of tickets so people could come and ridicule us. So I remember walking out, and it's about 800,000 people there. And there was uproar. And it was like 10, 15 minutes, I don't know, before it all kind of really settled down. There were plastic glasses being thrown, beer glasses being thrown at the stage. And I just stood there and waited, didn't say anything. And then it died down to silence, because they just, worked it through. And I said, you think I'm mad, don't you? You think I'm mentally ill? Yeah. Oh! And I said, well, so what does that say about you? You've paid money to come here tonight to ridicule someone you believe to be mentally ill. What does that say about you? Silence. Silence. The realization that in our actions and in our words, we are making statements about us. And the rest of the night, respectfully listen to me. And interestingly, once they started to get out and around that actually I wasn't talking crazy things, the audiences absolutely disappeared. Yeah. And for years, I was paying to speak most of the time. I'd turn up, put the chairs out, no one would sit on them virtually, and then I'd put the chairs back and go home, and that's what it was for ages. But it's a simple, truth that if what you say has validity, and you refuse to be battered into submission and silence, then eventually, if what you say has validity, it will be shown to be so. But you see, a lot of people came to my stuff and are coming to my stuff because of what I previously wrote in relation to what is now happening. Now, if I hadn't wrote that and got all the ridicule for it, this would not be happening. Because I'd say, yeah, I knew this was going to happen. No, you're just saying that. No, 1995, and the truth shall set you free. As you will well know, once the penny drops of what's going on in the world, there's no walking away if you really care. You might want to sometimes for a bit of a rest, but you never do, because you know that something has to be done and you have to keep going. And but when you believe in something, then you need to go for it and not run away or walk away, because you can have an effect by communicating information that has an effect. And we need to not just keep going, we need to up it and up it and up it and up it. And, when I look back at what it was like when I started, I mean, it was a very lonely bloody road. There weren't many people there. There's long gaps between people. But it ain't like that now.
Oh, yeah.
It's
but the playing field is much more dynamic.
It's such a joy to me, Patrick. Makes me quite emotional, really, when I see all these young people and new people setting up websites and what have you and radio stations and programs to communicate this stuff.
And like you said, Luke Rudowski, you see the We Are Change kids sprouting up in different cities.
It's unbelievable.
Just taking it on their own
fantastic.
back.
It's fantastic. This is a good point you make here in relation to people like Luke. You don't have to wait for someone to explain what you do. You don't. You just do it. You get on with it, and you learn. You learn on the hoof, and you learn from trial and error, which is what? It's experience. It's not really an error. It's an experience that teaches you something, and you become better and better at it.
Anybody who's any good at anything learned on the hoof.
Yes.
From my experience.
Oh yes.
Not at school.
No. Oh well, I left school at 15 to play soccer. It was one of the best things that ever happened in my life, But it's it's fantastic what's happening, and I just say to people, don't think about it, just do it. Don't think that only other people can do it. Oh, that David Icke can do it, but I can. Why? Look at me. 2 arms, head, body, legs, bit of arthritis, mind, consciousness. That's you. That's all of us. And we can, we can all make a contribution. The reason that people don't is if they don't realize there's a contribution to make because they don't know what's going on in the world. It's one thing, but if they do, it's because, well, I could never do that. Well, yes, you could. Yes, you could.
You did. I look at your website, I checked Alexa, you get incredible traffic. But there was a day when you started that site, you probably got a few hits a week, a few hundred a month maybe.
If that,
and
yes.
Now you're into the hundreds of thousands per month.
Yeah,
it starts from a small effort.
Oh, it's that old phrase, isn't it? A walk of 1,000 miles starts with the first step, and it's amazing if you go for it how the seas part, and you can do things that you never believed you could do. The only thing I would say about this whole conspiracy movement, and I don't know whether you've noticed this, Patrick, but I've noticed it very much in the last really 6 months, how people are within this arena are exposing themselves for their true motivation, not by being exposed by others, but by their own actions, often in attacking other people. Here we are again, believing they're making a statement about them when they're making a statement about themselves. In other words, there is an element in this conspiracy arena where, and this is all I ask of any researcher, I don't ask that they're always right. I mean, bloody hell, you're trying to uncover something that doesn't be uncovered, I don't ask any of that. I just ask that the cause is first, second, and last in importance, and their personal situation does not impinge upon it. And in other words, when someone does something they don't like within this arena, they say, well, I don't like it, but this guy's putting so much great information out, then I'm just going to walk away. Instead, it's, I must destroy this person because they've upset me. And if I destroy the ability of that person to put out all this great information, it doesn't matter because I'm more important than the information. And I see this. There is a strata.
Seeds of self-destruction.
Yeah, there's a strata within the conspiracy movement where this kind of mentality exists, and in the New Age and all that bloody stuff. If you're genuine, then what's best for the cause will always be first, and what's best for you will always be subordinate to that. Best for you individually, or expressing your resentment and bile on someone else will be secondary to the cause. Within this arena, there is a kind of unspoken, an unspoken kind of genuineness, if there, an unspoken moral code, bit fancy, but you know what I mean. This is what these researchers who, see you mate, all the best. This is what these researchers that do this don't bargain for. They think they're going to damage the target, and this kind of, there's a lot of people within this movement.
The peanut gallery is very intelligent.
Yeah, they have this this code, and they go, you don't shite on fellow researchers like that. Exactly. You don't do it because you're saying that you're more important than the great work this guy's doing.
Don't forget why you're doing it.
Don't forget why you're doing it.
You've done a lot in your books, in the touring, the live events. Is there anything that you're looking at in the future that there's still a nut that you haven't cracked?
One of the things that's exciting about my life is I don't know what's coming next, because I don't know what's coming through here next, intuitively. I mean, we have been putting on events at the Brixton Academy in London every 2 years, because I don't like to go back to a place until I've got a lot more to say. Every 2 years for quite a time now. But the last time I spoke there in 2010, the tickets went 6 months in advance, and we had to put another one on the same year. And so when it came round to 2012, I thought, well, we must have a bigger venue. We want to go to the Royal Albert Hall, not least because of the, give the energy a kick. But they weren't really interested in having me there. That's 4,000 people. And then you think, well, you go back to Brixton Academy at the time you want to do it, who've been great friends to us and very enthusiastic. And they say, oh, sorry, we can't do it at that time because it's the band season and all the seats are taken out. And this is how synchronicity works. When something doesn't work, then it's pointing you in a direction. It's either saying, no, that's not for you, or it's removing options, so they're pointing you in the direction of an option. And see, in the end, we talk about people need to open their consciousness and expand their consciousness to greater awareness, but that also applies to us. That's how you get greater insight into what's happening and the nature of reality, is by expanding your own consciousness. So your personal journey and that what you're communicating, they are absolutely the same thing.
You're your own research and development lab. Really.
Exactly that. The last thing we need is someone sitting cross-legged on a mountain saying, I'm there. Anyone who thinks they're there within all possibility is confirming they ain't. So it's a constant process of expanding your awareness, getting greater insight, and then communicating it. And about 3 weeks ago now, as we speak, I came back from Peru. I've been 2 weeks in Peru. And that, for me, in my experience, is the most powerful, energetically, the most powerful land in the world.
You could tune into a frequency there is much stronger than here, for instance?
Yes, it expands your consciousness. If you are able to access at that level, when I say access, I mean tune into it at that level. If you tune into Peru at another level, it won't do anything for you.
Is that something you feel physically, or is that something you feel mentally, or when you're in Peru?
You feel it. You feel it in your awareness, in your insight, in your energetic field, which is where it's all coming from anyway. See, the thing is, when people go to a certain spot, what they see is a piece of land. They might see a standing stone circle, or they might see some ancient Inca site, and they see stones piled on top of each other. But that's only the holographic, decoded, illusory physical level of it. What it is an electromagnetic field, and our auric field is an electromagnetic field, and they can tune into each other and be influenced. It's like you can post on the internet, you can take information from the internet, and thus if you can sync with these electromagnetic fields in these particular places, they can massively expand your awareness, because they can, like everything, they contain information. It's like a massive wireless internet that we're living in this universe.
It's like tapping into a new network.
Yes, exactly. And all I can say is, in 1991, my mind smashed open so dramatically and so fast in Peru that when I came back to England, I went on the Wogan show, and it's like my mind was so full of information, concepts, insights, and it's like
still processing.
Still processing it, and thinking, what the heck's happening? What's my name? Where am I? And then after 3 months, when all the ridicule was going, as a result of the Wogan show and stuff, it just went shh. The computer unfroze. And suddenly I'm me again, and people were saying to me, I thought you'd gone mad, you're still the bloke I used to know. Well, I was, but I wasn't, because I was seeing the world in a completely different way. So I went back to Peru, this time with a group, to experience the same places and one or two other places. And I didn't have the one big smash thing like I did in 1991, but I had a series of amazing experiences. And since I've come back, something's happening. People have noticed it in me without me telling them. Something's happening. Something's happening in my mind, in my awareness. Something's moving, something's shifting. And I've just started writing another book. And I'm writing it so fast, and it's coming out of me. And I've quite a bit of experience of sitting at a computer writing. I've never felt anything like this. It's like I am between two worlds. One foot in this one, but 1 foot, much bigger stride than before Peru this time, in another world. And where it's heading, I don't know, but it's nice. I think it's heading in the right direction. And I'll be as interested as anyone to find out where it's going, because only this will tell me when I feel it. For instance, if I woke up tomorrow morning and this said, "You need to go to India. You need to go to India," I'll be off to India. I mean, I live in a little 1-bedroom flat because I like to live in a 1-bedroom flat. I don't want the big house. I don't want the big car. I don't want all the bloody attention that takes. Oh, look at the garden. I don't want that stuff. I'm doing this for the rest of my life. But another reason that I do is because I want to be able to wake up tomorrow morning, and if this intuition says go somewhere, go here, go there for this length of time, I'm not saying what I'd like to, but my mortgage is so massive I can't. I'm light on my feet. Everything in my life is structured so that I can go anywhere, anytime when this speaks. And that's what I've been doing for 22 years, and it kind of works. This gets in the way. You can't do that, you can't do that. What will your mother say? What will the people down at work say? Whoa, you can't do that, you've got a mortgage. What are you going to do with a cat? Oh. No. Get out of the way. We're going. And what this does, Patrick, and has done now for 22 years, consciously, it's done it before, but I wasn't conscious of it, is it creates, you go into this synchronistic flow, and into it, or you are led to people, personal experiences, documents, books, which are constantly feeding you information that are giving you a wider insight of what's going on in the world. People say to me, where do you go to look for your information? I said, don't look. I've never looked. Synchronicity of life. So it's like some unseen force is handing you pieces in the puzzle, and have been doing for 22 years. It's so blatant and so synchronistic. It's sometimes I go, God, just pinch. Yes, that did just happen. And of course, in your life, you, like everybody, once you get on this path, you start noticing, what a coincidence! What a coincidence! Because you're on the when lots of coincidences start to happen in your life, you know you're starting to get on the path.
You recognize the door as well.
Yes.
You recognize the type of door, the type of handle. You say, "Oh, I know that one. I know that handle." You turn it. Yeah,
it's like going through. You're going through a maze. You've got these bloody great hedges. You don't know where you're bloody going, really. But something is, through the synchronicity of life and the coincidences of life, it's saying, no, not down there. No, not down there. Go down there. No, now right. It's like Morpheus on the phone, to Neo in the office. Get low down now.
Yeah.
And that's what it's like, and that's when you let this start to flow, because this will tell you all the reasons why you shouldn't listen to that and go right. You go left. Listen, I know, I've worked it out. You go left here in the maze, right? No, straight on. No, left. You know, your mother wants you to go left. You know, she wants you to work in a bank. She's always wanted you to go left. And you go left. And you go a few strides, long strides. Big hedge. No further. And if you flow with this, you listen. Straight on. Turn right. And if you go with it, you get through the maze.
There's no roadmap though to this. There's no roadmap that's laid down for this type of what you're talking about. This is point to point. You don't actually know what's around the corner.
No.
But you get used to taking that turn.
I've used this analogy before. You know, I mentioned it earlier, the river. The conscious mind, that which we're aware of, sees at any point in time, as you go down the river of life, if you like, the next point, the next turn in the river, it can't see any further. But that which is connecting here can see the whole journey from source to sea. So you can have a preconceived, that's a big prison, preconceived outcomes, because they set you up for disappointment. You know, you go to a football match and you have a preconceived outcome. This team must win or I'm disappointed. Well, if it loses or draws, then you've had a bad day. But if you just go and enjoy the game, not connected to any outcome, well, you can enjoy the game and win, lose or draw, you've had a good day. And it's the same with life. But you can be going down with a preconceived idea. I want to get to this point on the river by nightfall. And then maybe you spring a leak. And you have to get across to the shore and stop, and you're fuming, and oh, life, I'm so unlucky. And then someone comes down the bank and goes, hey mate, whoa, you were so lucky. Just behind that bloody bend is a massive bloody whitewater bloody nightmare. Or you can do it another way, which is you're going down the river and intuition says, pull over for the night, pull over for the night, pull over for the night. Oh no, says this. Oh, I want to get to my preconceived destination tonight. Or you go, listen, stop over for the night. Okay, stop over for the night. And this is what's going on all the time. And